Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today. This is the final edition of GWF webinar for this year. And today, my name is Sarah. I'm the Director of Product Management for Geospatial Media. I'll be with your host for the next 1 hour. Today, we will be discussing driving urban resilience with 5G plus geospatial. So we have two eminent speakers with us. Our first speaker is Mr. Gary Brantley. He is the Commissioner and CIO at City of Atlanta. Our second speaker is Mr. HENRIK Johansson. He is the Senior Advisor, Program Manager for Smart Region at the Capital Region of Denmark. We will start with HENRIK's presentation for 20 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm a program manager in the Smart City in the Capital Region, and before that, I've been working many years in at the national level, latest in the Danish Business Authority, where I started all the initiatives on big data for the government. I've also been working many years in the National IT and Telecommunication Agency, and while I've been in the state, I've also been represented in a working group in the OECD to look into the internet economy, and an expert group on European level on investment in digital infrastructure. So I've been working on this agenda for many years. Now it's the region where I started in 2015 and basically build up this smart city area we are hitting on right now. And I will tell you a bit about some of our data projects, but first, a little bit about who the Capital Region are. We are a political organization, so we have a political elected council who actually decides upon which projects we are going to do. We are positioned between the state level and the cities, and our mandate is at the regional level is basically to work with the cross-border issues between the different cities when it comes to environment, mobility, and education. And then we take care of all the hospitals in the region. And moreover, we are part of what we call Greater Copenhagen. And it's a cooperation where we work together 4 regions, and it's actually 2 of the regions are in south of Sweden and the other 2 in Denmark. But all of them is kind of surrounding the city of Copenhagen, and my region is representing the city of Copenhagen. So all in all, that makes us around 85 cities, and we are 29 in the Capital Region, and we sum up to around 4.3 million people, which is a better comparison to the larger metropolitan cities surrounding us. And just to tell you a little bit about our burning platform, of course, as many other Western countries, we look into how could we be more resilient to some of the climate changes happening around us. And we try to set some ambitious goals to reduce CO2 emissions. And we have these challenges with more and more people who want to live in the capital city, which bring challenges to energy consumption and congestion in traffic and so on. So when we work with our smart city and data projects, that is basically what we are trying to solve. So recently, we just launched a new regional development strategy, and not that I will tell you so much about that, but just say that we have some principle where the technology is included. The principle is innovation, and it basically means that when we do projects, we need to take advantage of digitalization and some of the new opportunities offered by technology and use of data. And why it is like that is basically because the politician and decision makers don't want this to be about the technology as such. We need to focus in on solving real problems. As a technology enthusiast, of course, I would love to have more on the technology side, but what I would add is that it's important not to think so much about the problem, but more actually the solution, because that is where you could bring in some of the technology opportunities available. And how did we arrive at this? I will just tell you a little bit about the journey we've been on. When I started back in 2015 in the region, and many smart city projects was quite fragmented, and we were coming out of the big data hype and hype around smart city as a word, and nobody knew what it was about. We basically started to work on 5 pillars. One of them was the strategy, where we tried to bring the actors in the region together to work towards a smarter region. Moreover, we knew from many reports, McKinsey and so on, that a lot of value was hiding in data. So we had to push forward some initiatives working on data. And to be able to transport all these data, of course, we also need to focus in on the digital infrastructure. How could we transport all these data? And to make sure that we could protect the data of the citizens, and make sure that when eventually we would have more digital solution, they would be secure from being hacked. We also need to think privacy and security in from the beginning. So how could we start some projects doing that? Moreover, there was a lack of skills, and many report forecasted that that would continue both when it comes to use of technologies, but also developing the technologies. We tried to develop some initiatives to both improve the skills in the cities, but also in companies. We had this dream about creating what we called a regional data hub, and we really didn't know what it actually should end and be about when we finalized it. It could be a physical place, co-working together with partners, but it could also be more technology driven. And that could mean that, for instance, we would have different kind of clusters within different sectorial areas, that when they would digitalize, they would link into the hub, and then we could share some service. There's, for instance, digital infrastructure, databases, tools for using data, and so on. And each cluster would then be a kind of a cooperation with partners, where we would be both public partners, private partners, and science institutions, and so on. And I will get back to the data hub a little later. We had this drawing of what we call a smart city house, which is kind of a simple model of a enterprise architecture, if you're familiar with that. And this is a bit more simple model than the one we had drawn. But the idea is that we should build a basic structure consisting of the mobile and broadband connections, but also data infrastructure, which then would support a test layer where we would develop solutions for the cities and demonstrate them in city space. And then we would have these cross-cutting areas where we would improve digital skills, look into security and privacy, and methods for developing different kind of solutions. These layers would then support all our sectoral units, the people sitting with the mobility, the climate issues, and so on, who would then use these solutions, and eventually we would reach our visions and goals for the region. And in this thinking, we started a project together with the city of Copenhagen, and a tender was won by Hitachi to build this data platform for private data. We already had some platforms for public data, so the idea was that if we could also have the same for private data and linked data, we would have a much better opportunity to have growth and interesting solutions in the region, and companies from abroad could innovate with some of these data. But soon we found out that there were some challenges with this platform. Among others, the companies had some concerns on putting data up at the platform. For instance, if they had some data that were anonymized, they were afraid that suddenly it would show that they weren't after all, and could lack some make available some private data. Moreover, we found out that actually when you do cases, you need quite specific data. For instance, if you have some ticketing data, you cannot use them to tell anything about cities or citizens moving around a square. So what was actually a success in this project was a support team for Hitachi who kind of on a daily basis was cooperating with the companies trying to find the right data. But eventually, the platform didn't have a positive business case, so we already closed it down again in 2018. So if just quickly should wrap a bit up on our data story, it is that we came from the start of some single data projects where the state set some basic data free. We had the cities opening up their own data, and we moved on to what we call Open Data DK, which is a cooperation on public data, and further on to the City Data Exchange, which was eventually closed. Where we are today, we have this regional data hub where we cooperate on data and moving on more and more into doing some of these data work in partnerships. So to wrap up the learning, what we learned is that we should definitely not start on developing the platform, but more go into the actual problems we need to solve, and then quite importantly involve the right people, focusing in on the use cases, and then try to have resource commitment to build or scale the solution and actually move more on the road to an ecosystem. But we haven't cracked the nut on this. It's still very difficult, and I think what is really lacking is this coherence, especially between the technology work and the top decision makers. And I think it's basically because when you work on these initiatives, we are pretty much still placed in the lowest level, where we are still working in silos many places. We are beginning to share more data and work together, but it's a quite long road before we actually have these skills to share technology and data. And if you look into some of the learnings from the larger companies in this area, they actually took more than 10 years to move to the top level, where you are more able to work more agilely with dynamic data and a more integration. So you both have integration and the agile opportunity to use data across different kind of actors. Now I will just tell you a bit about our concrete project. I already mentioned the Open Data DK work we have, where we actually cooperate with the cities, the regions, the state to make available public data on a platform. And they are open for private companies to make innovation. And what we're working on now is to focusing more in on dynamic data from sensors and how to make the data of high quality. And we just recently launched a tool that could actually clean data to be a better format for use of the ones who wish to use public data. And I already mentioned the Regional Data Hub, and the Regional Data Hub is kind of a flagship initiative where smart city actually became quite concrete in the region. And we now have 20 cities working together to solve different kind of challenges with data within mobility, within climate issues, and city operation. At the moment, we developed 12 prototypes, and 5 of them are we looking into if we could scale these solutions, but it's not very easy. And what we kind of found out is that it's very dependent on how strong the business case is. For instance, it's easy to scale a project where, for instance, we have this with sensors in facilities where cities could make better optimized use of a building, or have higher earnings when people, for instance, book some sports facilities. So that's easy to scale because there's a quick return on investment. But some of the other projects where we cope with traffic jams or flow of water around the region, it's difficult because the value proposition is more complex. So I think to make this succeed, we need to have a much more complex system of many partners working together to have a more balanced value proposition. We haven't cracked the nut, but that's the road we are on at the moment. And just to mention one of the cases where we are using floating car data to steer the traffic light, we know and have demonstrated that this means very faster traveling times, less waste of time in traffic, and a reduction in CO2 emissions. And if we could scale that to a national level, that would actually mean huge amounts of saving when it comes to the CO2 and waste of hours in traffic and so on. But still, it's very difficult to scale, and I think it's because it's not a value proposition where you have the public sector who has a challenge and then a private company who delivers the solutions. It's much more complex. You need to bring in more partners to scale these projects. But what is happening right now is that we actually have our mobility people working to use data from traffic lights and try to see how could they steer different kind of traffic light management systems. And we are having built a test of this in our living lab called DOL, which is the largest lab for testing of smart city equipment in Europe. And this is hoped to be scaled into a larger area to test if we could do something around the traffic within this. Moreover, we have a quite interesting project where we have put up some networks with the cities. They use LIII, but can also use other communication networks. And the picture here is from a square in a part of Copenhagen called Frederiksberg, where they have a lot of sensors to see how water is flowing when it's when there could be cloudbursts, but also how to use some of the water for amusement and so on. And in this project, and what is quite interesting is that we actually having built a platform where no matter what sensor a city put up, they could send the data through the platform to a function or to the local data warehouse, or there will be an integration to our Open Data DK platform where data could be put out available for the use of private companies and so on. And we expect to launch this platform at the end of the year, but that should make it much more easier for the cities to work. And the communications networks are also going to be included. So, for instance, if a city wishes to use Sigfox or some of the networks from the telecommunication companies that use NB-IoT or some of the GNets, it will be possible to use this platform. And of course, 5G, which is on everyone's lips at the moment, is also of interest to us. And in Denmark, where the rollout of broadband is placed in the market, not every city could expect to be able to use 5G because maybe it will never come there. So we are trying to put up a project where we could increase the demand from the cities by showing them use cases of how could you actually use 5G. And one of the projects are probably going to be a self-driving bus, where we would see how we could use 5G in this. But then we would also improve the knowledge in the cities of what is actually the design of this, what these small cells who are going to be put up, what they look like, and how could we help the cities to have best practice when it comes to all the administrative work that comes with putting up these networks. And eventually there's also a lot of concerns among the population around radiation and so on, and we will try to get the right information out there, because the test there is really nothing to fear. So but even though there's so much misinformation on this. So if I should just wrap up a bit about some of the learnings we have when we work with the project, is that definitely we have some cost savings and better use of resources or city service when we use some of these technologies and share data. But it's difficult to do these things alone. We need to do these things in partnerships, and that's the way we are moving. And it is really important to include the leadership to scale the solutions. So you would integrate your business units and break down some of these silos we still have today. And I think some of the solutions for this could be to think of this as an architecture challenge. Just as you plan cities, you need to plan technology projects, and you need to have the top level involved in this. So, and there's been many talk about this, by moving forward, by failing and start with the use case, and of course that's a way to continue. But I think that's important in the first step when we are still have these silos. But when you move ahead, you need also to think about the platforms which actually are going to really make a difference when it comes to cost, and being able to have an execution platform to actually reach your goal of a city or a region or a private company for that sake. Because you need to have this plug and play system to really have this digital layer of the city. So that's some of the projects we've been working on in the capital region of Denmark. And I hope you have some interesting questions later. But I think that was my 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Henrik. So you have 20 minutes, Gary.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are today. I'm going to talk a little bit about driving urban resilience, and a little bit about what the city of Atlanta has been doing, and kind of what our focus has been over the last few years. As you know, many of you know, we are heavily involved in a lot of smart city projects, and we have a lot of key projects that are underway. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we had to kind of make a reset in order to make sure that, number one, we were driving stabilization, but also our efforts to go back to stabilize our infrastructure across the city, so that we were in a position to really optimize as we move forward. And so one of the key themes that we had was getting back to basics. And so a lot of things that we hear about as it relates to smart cities, was the same way in the city of Atlanta. We had a lot of devices on the edge. We had a lot of key conceptual projects underway, but one of the areas that we needed to focus on was really making the city of Atlanta a connected city. And so that meant that we had to really start to focus on some of the basics to make that happen. And so we came up with what we call the 4 pillars of success. It's the change imperative framework. And this framework yielded close to 42 initiatives across the city of Atlanta. And so this is, below you'll see examples of how our initiatives are mapped to the framework. And so one of the areas of focus was to really make sure that we were delivering reliable, cost-effective, and secure IT services for the city of Atlanta. And that meant, taking a step back to really make sure that our infrastructure was stabilized and that our security, was wrapped around everything that we were putting in place. We wanted to go back and really define a real robust IT model. And we wanted to simplify a lot of what I would call overhead and a lot of complications to really make sure we got Atlanta back to our goal, which is really being not just a smart city, but we wanted a connected city. We wanted our underserved community to be represented. We wanted to really drive urban resilience and 5G through making sure that no one was left behind and that everyone in the city was in a position to really be able to take advantage of it. And so with that, we had to make sure we were aligned in a lot of key delivery service areas. We wanted to make sure that we were defining standards. We wanted to make sure that we also had a 3 to 5 year strategic plan, in the mix, and also really trying to find across the city of Atlanta, what are our common priorities and what should we really focus on and what can we drive, through the city of Atlanta quickly in order to really have some quick wins. And so with that, ultimately we wanted to make sure we were innovating in this process and we were accelerating, which meant that we couldn't, take a long time. The investments that we already had in place for smart city projects, we wanted to make sure that they were taken care of. And so these are some of the areas. And also we had an application modernization project going on as well, because we wanted to modernize and really invest in some of the things that we had, but really turn off a lot of areas that weren't really something that the city was looking at. And so this was based off of 4 priority areas, which was operational improvement, infrastructure and security. We wanted business engagement and alignment, and some things that we really don't talk about as it relates to smart city or connected city, which is we wanted talent and we wanted a great operating model, to really be able to take advantage of the services that were coming inside of the city. One of the areas that we looked at is what I call the 5-5-5 concept. What can we do in 5 days? What can we do in 5 weeks? And what can we do in 5 months? We really wanted to accelerate these projects. We really did not want to waste any time. We had several projects such as traffic preemption, where we were trying to alleviate traffic within the city. We had lots of projects as it relates to our airport and making sure that we were up in front as one of the world's first airports to really have 5G. So that was really working. We had a lot going on with the Super Bowl. I'm sure many of you all know what that is within the city of Atlanta. So we had a lot of technology being pushed to the edge. We had a lot of technology that we were taking advantage of, whether it was through aviation, whether it was through street lighting, or whether it was through our ability to really be able to define and control traffic patterns throughout the city of Atlanta, which in a lot of cases was a big mountain to climb. Next, this just gives you a little bit of an example of our project as it relates to application rationalization. And when you're talking about smart cities and what you have and 5G and really being able to take advantage of your application portfolio, this is just like a roadmap that kind of shows you a lot of our redundancies across the city. And so part of being a connected city and some of the things that we were focusing on was really trying to make sure that, we weren't redundant across the city. We weren't wasting money. We were looking for cost savings as a whole. What could we do? How could we use this technology? How could we use these projects to really drive cost savings across the city of Atlanta? Next, I talked a little bit about, and this is just give you an example earlier about the Super Bowl. If many of you all haven't heard or don't know, it's America's favorite pastime. Atlanta was actually favored and blessed to really be able to put this on for the world. And so, as you know, when you do these types of events, they are full of technological projects. And in some cases, this game really allows you to really embed a lot of technology into your city that wasn't there previously. So this really gave us an opportunity to really, what I would say, be agile in a lot of places, to really scale rapidly and quickly. And this was this game was used for that. Just so you know, there were a lot of smart city projects connected to this, but there were about 70,000 people in this actual arena for this game. More than 500,000 visitors came for this game. We had 100+ Super Bowl related events, most of which were tied to a lot of technology was embedded in a lot of these events, RFIDs and all those types of things, which I'm sure we'll get to later. But this just gives you a quick example of the kind of holistic view of what was going on during the 2 weeks that this event was taking place. In order to get this done, we talk about partnerships. We created Team ATL, and we partner with multiple agencies, multiple Fortune 500 companies. Both the agencies consisted of federal agencies, local agencies, state agencies, and what we did was we created a centralized information workflow where we all could be tapped in and where we all could understand what we were doing. So we were an extension and a chain link of each other. And so I think this really proved valuable around a lot of our security enhancements that we had in place. We were really working as one team, and this is kind of unheard of, but it also allowed us to find commonalities across the city on what we wanted to do as it related to our move forward around technology and also security. So this was really, I would say, 2 years ago, the start of how we really started to move forward collectively as a city. We have close to 5.5 million customers that we serve across the Atlanta metro area. We have close to 1.2 million water customers that we serve. We have the world's busiest airport. We're doing close to 80,000 flights a week. And so we have a lot of traffic, Uber and Lyft and those type of share ride services. We were doing 27,000 drop off and pickups a day. And so, as you can see, we serve a lot of customers. We have a lot going on within our city. And so we wanted to make sure that we had common focus area, common priorities on all of the things that we wanted to do as it relates to smart cities, as it relates to the Super Bowl, and as it relates to security. Some of the things we learned from this, this is always like to draw lessons learned. And so when you're doing big events that take advantage of technology, we wanted to make sure we had alignment across our city. We had blackout dates established, which means at some particular point, we had to cut off a lot of projects that we were doing and we had to make sure that a lot of our partners ceased moving forward on their projects, and that included a lot of our fiber connectivity projects that we had going on. So that meant no digging, no real extensive installs were going on. And so, these are some of the lessons learned, and also we had risk assessments going on as well. The other thing is, I think when we're looking at our 5G plan and what we're looking at as it relates to smart cities, one of the areas that was extremely important was the Atlanta CIO Advisory Board. And so this was something the mayor allowed me to establish. And it really talked about cross-functional strategic collaboration amongst thought leaders and industry professionals. And so, we have C-suite leaders from organizations like Delta, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, and also Equifax, et cetera. Those are just some examples of organizations that have partnered with the city of Atlanta to really develop innovative practices and collaborate with us. We wanted community buy-in, and we wanted to create investment opportunities amongst our partners. And so, there's been some really great things to come out of this. One of which is a project that we're using as a smart city initiative called Accelerate Atlanta. And this is a partnership that was developed by the CIO Advisory Board with the help of the CIO Advisory Board. If you get a chance, check it out. It's a huge commitment by Microsoft and also Accenture to really invest into the community. Our mayor wanted to really focus our smart city efforts on the underserved community. And so this puts millions of dollars inside of a pot for us to really be able to make sure that our workforce, our residents are really thriving in the city of Atlanta. Just a couple of areas I want to talk about is the COVID-19 kind of civil unrest. And so, the city of Atlanta, if you weren't paying attention, had a lot of social injustice issues going on within the city. And what most people saw locally was, the destruction and devastation of a lot of our physical buildings. But what they did not see was the fact that we had a lot of technology in place to really handle what I would call digital looting. And so a lot of our infrastructure, our 5G framework that we had in place and we were taking advantage of, a lot of areas that we improved as it relates to connectivity and stabilization really allowed us to get through this pandemic. And that's not just that, that's also as it relates to really closing down a lot of our buildings, a lot of our areas, especially City Hall. We turned this into more of a digital City Hall. And we've really been able to take advantage of a lot of our smart city projects during this time. There were some challenges. We had a lot of challenges at first, really trying to adjust to this new normal. And I don't really hear a lot of smart city talk around just really how we were able to use COVID to really advance some of our smart city projects, but we were able to really do that. We had this goal that we wanted to really become paperless across the city of Atlanta. We wanted to provide more mobile services for our residents, and we wanted to bring our services to their living room and to their home. And so we've been able to actually do that. We've strengthened our permitting process across the city. You don't have to come into the city of Atlanta anymore. That was on a long smart city type roadmap. We're providing a lot of data to the administration, allowing the administration to really be able to make quick, decisive decisions. And we're driving a lot of change through just informed, data-driven decision making. This just gives you a little bit of an example of what you saw physically, but how technology really helped us kind of move forward in this area. And so, our operational impact, how have we changed? Do we foresee fundamental changes in how we work? Absolutely. Is smart cities at the forefront of it? It's at the top of the agenda. Technology is at the top of the agenda for the city of Atlanta. And so we continue to adjust and make changes, as many of you all are across the world, to really be able to continue to service our residents. A couple of just key areas that we kind of really focused on, and this will be the last slide, and what we feel is really tied to our ability to really transform the city of Atlanta. We have an organizational transformation, 7 steps to impact and influence. And so these are some of the areas that we really have been focusing on that don't have anything to do with technology per se, but that really drive organizational transformation. And so with that is, my presentation. And so I'll turn it back over.
Yep. Thank you, gentlemen. Both presentations are very interesting. I find your focus on resilience a bit different. Like HENRIK, you talk more about sustainability, while Gary, you talk more about the security. So it's great that we can actually see a holistic view of city resilience from both sides, the security part and the sustainability part. But still, the digital infrastructure plays a huge role, the data and the technology. So my first question for you is, has your view about city resilience changed after COVID? Like, what are the lessons learned? Maybe Henrik, you can start, because I don't think you touched much about COVID in your presentation.
Yes and no. I would say it's not like we suddenly have a different strategy of how to move forward than when we used to. So the strategy we just launched has been launched in the COVID period, and was actually begun before it started. So no changes there. But of course, we know that we will never go back to how it was before. So that means less traveling time and more people working from home compared to before. So already in this relation, we have some value from reduction in CO2 emissions because of the decrease in transport. So I think it's changed habits, but it's kind of come from society and not really decided strategically. But yeah, it will probably be integrated in the years ahead when we kind of get used to new ways of working, because we are not really, we don't know where we're going yet. We have to find out, and I also think we will see more solutions which help us work from home or really free us up from physical places. And that will help us change our habits, but we are only in the beginning. So I think it's a cultural change we are going through.
Okay. And Gary, what about you? Any new strategy after COVID in terms of technology?
You know, of course, things have changed drastically. I think the biggest change we've seen is just our ability to move a lot faster. I think when you start to look traditionally, especially in the U.S., at government agencies, we tend to have a kind of stigma tied to us around just being slow, being dated in a lot of areas, and so I think it's allowed us to really be able to work on that narrative a lot quicker. So we've seen a lot of the politics that usually exist kind of go down heavily, and we also were able to really see a rapid adoption of just the technology that we've put in place, because people had to rely on it a lot more. So, we have seen a lot of change. I think change as it relates to our workforce and their ability to be a lot more accepting of changes that had to take place rapidly. So that's what we're seeing.
Right. Okay. And both of you mentioned a little bit about 5G, but I understand the technology might be still in the preliminary phase. But do you have any plan on how 5G can further enhance your city resilience, Henrik?
Yeah, I think many still are kind of confused about this 5G, because what is happening at the moment is basically the 5G networks being upgraded. So the antennas you already have is getting a bit faster, but that doesn't mean really that we have the full potential of the 5G, because that's when we need to put up all the small cells, because you actually need quite short distance between each access point, and the network today won't solve this. So of course that's important for the cities, also the region, to look into this, because we need to demand some solutions before the companies start putting up these cells, and we are not there where all the smart city solutions actually put a demand on these high amounts of data needed to be transported. It's still very much people who need to watch Netflix and 4K formats on a mobile phone. That's the demand, because all the sensors we use for cloudburst or traffic counting and so on, that doesn't really put so high amount on the solutions at the moment. So we need to move on into using drones and stuff like that, where we need more stability in the networks and fast communication to be able to steer a drone before it crashes into a building or sort of things. And I think we will begin to see it, but it's the discussion with the hen and the egg, and it's still premature. It definitely is. Yeah.
Right. And Gary, what about in Atlanta?
Yeah, I agree. It still has a long way to go. I really just feel like we're just getting to a point where we are able to take advantage of 4G, the full 4G that's out there. I still think that we have a long way to go conceptually. I think the biggest area of focus is just making sure that, when we do get there, that the city is in a position to take advantage of it. And so, we're working on making sure that the infrastructure continues to be laid in order to make sure that, when things do start to develop, that we're able to take advantage of it, because we're seeing a lot of, we have a lot of residents requesting a lot of data. We're going to need that capability to be in place, especially on our edge, when we start talking about all the edge devices that are out within the city of Atlanta, and also a lot of the great work that we're doing at the airport. We talked about drones. We have a lot of our partners, such as Southwest, such as Delta, such as United, that uses drones to actually be able to inspect planes. And so they're looking for that capability more so than others to really jump ahead and really be able to service their areas quickly. So I agree.
Right. Both of you mentioned drones, and another technology that is what do you call, like, the people are talking about right now is the self-driving vehicles. And I'm sure this kind of technology will definitely need 5G, because it needs such a high definition maps, and all the sensors have to process everything like real time. So what do you think of, do you think cities are ready for autonomous vehicles even without 5G? Henrik, you first.
Well, it still depends on the technology development, and before you start using solutions, there has to be some kind of need, which is a general condition before you roll out the technology, and still. It's not for sure that the car actually needs to communicate with networks. There could be other kind of sensor solutions which make the vehicles run in the city and kind of be a self-sufficient unit. But so when we look to the Tesla, for instance, which many are following, of course, it doesn't really need to be able to communicate. So I think that there needs to be a use case. You need to have a problem you're actually solving before you need to put up small cells all along a main road. So it can. There needs to be a return on investment, basically, to put it up, and we are not there yet.
Right. What about you, Gary? Your opinion on self-driving?
Yeah, we still have some ways to go. I think we're stepping towards that. We had a lot of conceptual projects with self kind of driving trolleys within the city of Atlanta, and so across our like innovation corridors. But right now we've really stepped into more of a traffic preemption kind of area where we're really trying to find that middle ground where a lot of our vehicles that we purchase as consumers, and a lot of our vehicles that we have within the city within city government can connect to a lot of our technological devices. So we're really looking at traffic flow, controlling traffic, making sure that we provide a vehicle for our citizens to really be able to try to use more public transportation. And so we're looking at that as a step, in between the whole area of self-driving vehicles.
Right. So is the safety aspect as well is there?
Yep.
I'm not seeing good questions from the audience.
But maybe I could just comment because I think as I also mentioned in my presentation that I think you need to look into this as kind of an architectural planning. So 5G is as many other things. You need to think about the future and what does these new opportunities mean for your opportunities to execute on your vision and goals further down the road. So you could share this new opportunity of building solutions needing fast data transport, and we don't have this set of all kinds of solutions at the moment who need this fast transport. So that's why I think we need to see more use cases in practice that we show this is a good idea. And then when we link many of these use cases together, then we could start building all the small cells along our main roads, because it could be used by, for instance, ambulances, emergency on the road, so they could start treatment while going towards the hospitals and so on, and maybe other solutions, drones and carrying packages and so on, could use it for coordination and stuff like that. But we never know what the solutions will be yet. But someone probably have some good guesses of what solutions could be.
Right. So when do you see all these solutions will come to life? In 2025, 2030? Any prediction?
Well, we just started to roll out the 5G network in Denmark, and I think a couple of years will pass before we start with the small cells, and probably it will maybe be some companies who actually need some of these solutions first for improving their products and services. So I think they will be a bit ahead of the cities, large companies who need some logistic handling, who needs fast speed data. So I think 2 years plus before we really see something's happening in the cities. But we also know that the development is accelerating. So it should take many years. I'm not sure that would happen, but now we have a couple of years to do some use cases and think about how to link them. And when the demand is there, of course, the telecommunication sector will roll out the networks.
Right. We are running a poll right now. Which of the following roles of cities is most fundamental to the deployment of 5G? And 57% of the audience said infrastructure investment. So do you agree that cities should invest in 5G infrastructure? Gary?
Yeah, and I think they're absolutely correct. I don't see how you're able to move forward if you don't have the foundation in place. I'm a real big component of it, a proponent of it. And so when you really start to look at, what will make you successful, long term, is really having the infrastructure in place that's not just, but it needs to be flexible as well. And I think that's extremely important.
Right. We have 3 minutes, so I'm going to give each of you 1.5 minutes closing remark, how do you see the city of the future like? After your experience with COVID, what should be the future-ready city for better resilience in the city? Maybe, Henrik, you want to start?
Well, basically, I think it will kickstart digitalization because, of course, many companies didn't go through the COVID period very successful. So there's no way you're going to think this is not our case. Everyone needs to get on track and start using digital technologies. So that's going to be faster both for cities and the private sector. But yeah, of course, you still need the investment. You still need to have the uptake in the population. So yeah, it will take time still, but maybe a bit faster.
Right. Now that we have to live with the virus, I think that will be one of the motivation. And Gary, what about you? Your last thoughts?
Yeah, I just think that, as we continue to move more to these digital city concepts, that we have to make sure that, I think the biggest goal for this is to make sure that our residents can take advantage of it. It's pointless if they're left behind. And so I think we need to be careful that we're not moving one-sided, that we're just so focused on the technology and really not focused on the residents' ability to adopt it and use it in a meaningful way. And I think that has to always be at the forefront of your thought process when you're doing these things, because you can really, and I've seen it done where you become so advanced, as an organization, as a government, that those who you're serving have no ability to really take advantage or have really been left behind. And so you really are only catering to a certain side of your population, and that's not good for anyone. And so, if I had to leave any thoughts, any parting thoughts, it would be to make sure that as we move forward, that we keep residents at the top of our mindset when doing these things.
So thank you both speakers.
Thank you.